Welcome to Roughing It with Ruth, the channel where everything is a bit rough around the edges. Organising a backpacking trip in the Drakensberg mountains can seem really daunting, especially if you're doing it for the first time. In this video, I'll go through my method for getting a backpacking trip organised, and I'll try to give as many real-world examples as I can from my own backpacking experience so that you can see how to apply this to your next backpacking adventure. Planning a Drakensberg backpacking adventure is all about narrowing down your options. The Drakensberg mountains are a really large range of mountains that run along the eastern border between Lesotho and South Africa from north to south. And there is a huge amount of wilderness in that area where you can go on a backpacking trip. So the first question you're going to want to ask is not where, but who. Who is going to be going on this backpacking adventure? Is it just you? Is it a group of friends or family? You need to know what everybody's fitness levels and experience levels are, and you need to know what people's expectations are. Is there someone in the group that really wants to summit the Drakensberg? In other words, get to the top of the escarpment? Or is there someone who would absolutely love being able to sleep in a cave? Is there someone who is particularly interested in Bushman paintings and would like to see those on the trip? My suggestion is to go in a group if you're planning a Drakensberg backpacking adventure. I don't think it is the safest idea to go out on your own. No matter how experienced you are or how fit you are, things can happen out in the wilderness. And if you're on your own and there's no one to help you, then you can really get into a huge amount of trouble very, very quickly. The second question that you're going to want to ask is still not where. It is, how much time do you have for this backpacking trip? If you have multiple days or weeks for your backpacking trip, you could start considering longer options such as the Drakensberg Grand Traverse, where you go up on one end and down at the other. But most people only have a few days, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days. And that is definitely going to limit your options. You can't travel every single pass in the Drakensberg mountains in that amount of time. It's just not physically possible. Then the third question that you need to answer is, where are you coming from to get to the Drakensberg mountains? If you're going to be coming from Gauteng in the north, then perhaps the northern and central part of the Drakensberg are going to be a bit more attractive to you. After those first 3 questions, who are you going with? How much time do you have? And where are you coming from? You should have an idea of the general area of the Drakensberg mountains that you want to visit. Now, what you need to do is start deciding which specific route you want to go on. What you're going to need in order to do this is information about the area that you are going to. Some of the best resources are the Slingsby maps of the Drakensberg area. They can be purchased online. They can also be purchased in some bookstores and in some outdoor stores and at some KZN wildlife offices. Another absolutely fantastic resource that you can find online is the Vertical Endeavour website. I use them all the time. It's vertical-endeavour.com. And they are fantastic. They have a downloads section which has a lot of GPS tracks for specific passes. They also have a very nice community forum area where you can find out current information about the places that you are wanting to visit. Google in general and YouTube as well can also be really helpful when you're planning your trip. Some things that you are definitely going to want to pay particular attention to when you're researching your various route options: the current water situation in the area. Some areas can be much drier than others. Crime can also be quite an issue everywhere in South Africa, so you should try to find out if there have been recent incidents in the area that you are planning to go. Another thing that can really make or break your decision on whether or not to hike in a certain area is the access road to that area. I don't own a 4x4 vehicle, so I know if I want to go and hike in an area that has a really bad access road, for instance, the Sentinel car park, which is the start of the chain ladders hike up to the top of the amphitheater, then I will definitely need to either go with someone who does own a 4x4 vehicle, or I will need to hire a shuttle from the Vitsisuk Mountain Lodge to get past that particular section of road. While you're going through this process, you will probably find that there are still numerous different options for your backpacking trip. There won't just be one that is perfect for your particular needs. And this is actually a really good thing, because having alternatives, and particularly when you're organizing a group backpacking trip, having alternatives is really nice in case of adverse weather conditions, or suddenly finding out that one of your group members has an incredible fear of heights and would prefer not to do the belt traverse, for instance. Once you have all of your different alternative routes picked out, now is the time that you're going to need to pick just one. Decide where you are going to be going and make sure that you have all the navigational equipment for that particular route. So make sure you have the correct map and a GPS track if you can get it. Another really important thing that you need to do is familiarize yourself with the rules of the area that you are going to. A lot of the Drakensberg mountains are part of the Molotti Drakensberg Park, and it's administered by Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife. And those park areas have specific rules. For instance, you are not allowed to fly a drone in the park at all. You should also make sure that you know about leave no trace principles and that you are able to adhere to them. There are some parts of the Drakensberg Mountains that are not administered by Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife. Specifically the Mweni area in the north, that is actually part of a traditional authority area, and the trailhead where most people start, the Mweni Cultural Center, that is actually a community managed center. So it is not part of KZN Wildlife, and that area of the Drakensberg is also not part of the Molotti Drakensberg Park. At this point, you're going to want to see exactly what the cost is going to be of your backpacking trip. You will have to pay overnight hiking conservation fees for hiking in the Drakensberg Park. At the moment, I believe it's 80 Rand per night, but you can check this on the Ezemvelo KZN website under their tariffs and conservation fees. You might also need to book and pay for accommodation at the start or the end of your hike if you're not planning on driving all the way back home at the beginning or end of your hike. You do not need to book your hike in advance with KZN Wildlife. You can just arrive and start hiking. But if you are planning on staying in certain caves that are part of the Molotti Drakensberg Park, then you might need to book those caves. And that you can do through KZN Wildlife as well. There are some caves that you don't need to book and some caves that you do need to book. Specifically the caves in the Mweni area, you don't need to book. It's a first come, first serve situation. Now it's getting closer to the actual time of the trip. And at this point, what you should definitely do is check the weather situation. I really like using a website called Mountain Forecast. The nice thing about that particular website is that it has actual mountain peaks on it, and you can check the weather at different elevations. This is really helpful because if you go and look at the weather in, for instance, Bergville, when you're going to the Mweni area, that can be vastly different to the weather that is actually happening up in the mountains. And if you're going into the mountains, what you want to know, obviously, is what the weather's going to be like up there. Now that you've checked the weather, you can start packing your gear because you know exactly what sort of gear you're going to need. You can also then take this opportunity to check all of your gear and make sure that nothing is missing or broken. Just before you go on your trip, it's really good practice to share a detailed itinerary of your backpacking trip with a trusted friend or family member. Then when you actually arrive at your hiking destination, you need to make sure that you fill in the mountain rescue register, not the day hiking register, but the overnight mountain rescue register, where you'll have to fill in details of exactly where you're going, how many people are in your group, what color tents you have, and all that sort of thing. And you usually do that at the same time as paying your conservation fee. The Mountain Rescue Register is not always in exactly the same place. For instance, in the Cathedral Peak area, people sometimes think that the Mountain Rescue Register is at the Cathedral Peak Hotel, and it's not. It's just down the road at the Didima Resort. And at that point, you are all ready to go and start enjoying your backpacking trip. Let me know in the comments down below if I've missed anything out that you usually use in order to plan your own backpacking trips, or if there's a specific video that you would like me to make in future. You can also click on my channel name to see videos that I've made in the past.